Welcome back, everyone, in the 90-day New Testament study. Get ready, because in this explainer for Movement 1, the Gospels, we are diving into something truly wild. We're going to unpack the shocking, completely unsettling, but ultimately transformative story of the Gerasene demoniac from Mark chapter 5. But before we get into the weeds, we've got to set the stakes. Mark presents us with a guy who is just completely destroyed. Socially, psychologically, spiritually, you name it. It's honestly the most extreme case of human brokenness you'll find anywhere in the gospel. And looking at someone this far gone forces us to ask a really heavy question. Is anyone beyond redemption? Can God's power actually reach someone who's hit rock bottom and just kept digging?
So here's how we're going to tackle this. We'll start with the Greek beneath the surface, then look at naming the psychological shadow, dive into the theological kingdom invasion, talk about the scandalous cost of wholeness, and wrap up with a daily formation challenge for your week.
All right, Section 1, the Greek beneath the surface. Let's step right onto the eastern shore of the Sea of Galilee, into some pagan, Gentile territory. So check this out. When the demon introduces itself as Legion, a first-century audience wouldn't just think, oh, that means a lot of them. Nope. Legion is literally a Latin loanword for a Roman military force. We're talking 6,000 soldiers. So this implied a brutal, highly organized military occupation of this man's soul. This isn't just some primitive superstition. It's a terrifying portrait of evil as something systemic, coordinated, and incredibly destructive. And the details get even darker. The text uses the Greek word tapos, which tells us this man literally lived among the tombs. Think about that for a second. He's walking through the valley of the shadow of death every single day, completely cut off from the rest of humanity. Socially and ritually, the guy is already dead. Then there's this word that just breaks your heart, katakaptopto. It translates to, he cut himself with stones. But the kicker here is the imperfect tense in Greek. That implies an ongoing, daily habit of self-harm. It's a tragic, vivid picture of a soul completely at war with itself. Moving right along to Section 2, naming the psychological shadow. Let's shift gears and look at this whole encounter through a psychological lens. You see, Jesus doesn't just walk up and start casting out spirits blindly. The very first thing he does is ask, "What is your name?" And that is absolutely crucial, because naming the chaos, that suppressed, festering darkness inside, is the first real act of dominion and liberation. Jesus forces the darkness to confess exactly what it is. Because let's face it, you cannot defeat what you refuse to name. There is a massive difference between letting that shadow run the show from your unconscious and dragging it out, kicking and screaming into the light. Repressed chaos just festers, it takes on a life of its own, and as the text points out, no chains can hold it down. But when you name that chaos, suddenly it's brought under understanding. By speaking its true nature out loud, you finally gain dominion over it. Which brings us to Section 3, the theological kingdom invasion. Now we're looking through N.T. Wright's theological lens. What's amazing here is how this one man's story is basically the entire biblical arc in miniature, right? It starts with creation, where we're made to have a right mind. Then we hit the extreme fall. This guy is totally isolated, naked in the tombs. Then comes redemption, as Jesus actually crosses into unclean territory to restore and clothe him. And finally, new creation, where he is sent out as a missionary to the Gentiles way before there were even missionaries. And the result of this kingdom invasion is just staggering. When the townspeople finally show up, they find the man sitting, clothed, and in his right mind. Those are the three definitive marks of restored humanity: rest, dignity, and wholeness. Jesus literally brings order back to the chaos. Okay, let's hit Section 4, the scandalous cost of wholeness. Because we have to acknowledge there is a really hard edge to this narrative. 2,000. Let that sink in. Freeing this one single man cost the townspeople an entire herd of 2,000 pigs. I mean, that is a massive economic disruption, and frankly, it terrified the locals way more than the violent demoniac ever did. The kingdom of God comes in like a fire, and sometimes it burns up things we really care about. This is the tragic irony of the whole story. The townspeople literally begged Jesus to leave. Why? Because they'd much rather have their manageable, familiar hell over the costly, totally disruptive wholeness that Jesus brings. We also see that evil is limited here, sent into the pigs, but not totally wiped out yet. And get this, when the healed man wants to hop in the boat and safely follow Jesus,
Jesus actually says no. He tells him to go home. Because sometimes staying in your own messy hometown is a way harder mission than just moving on.
Finally, Section 5, your daily formation challenge. Let's make this super practical for your week. Here's the challenge for your own spiritual formation. First, take inventory. I want you to identify and literally name one of your own familiar tombs out loud. Second, just sit with it. Sit with the uncomfortable fear of what Christ's wholeness might actually disrupt in your life. Like, what are your pigs that you're afraid to lose? And third, take action. Cross into someone else's Gentile territory this week to be present with them in their isolation, just like Jesus did. Hold on to this anchor statement as you go through your week. The true measure of Christ's authority isn't the greatness of the storm he calms, but the absolute depth of the brokenness he restores. No legion of chaos is ever too large, too systemic, or too dark to be named, confronted, and cast out by the one who calls us home. So I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought to chew on. What are you unwilling to lose in order to be made whole? Really think about that. Hey, if this explainer helped your study, please hit subscribe on our YouTube channel, give this explainer a like, and share it with your lecture group before our next deep dive. Thanks so much for learning with us, and I'll catch you next time.